welcome back to another battle report or two. This video we've got a couple of games from our first meetup as a group, as a playing group, first meetup since the pandemic began. Now we got together just 4 years this time because it's going to take a bit of time to get it all going again, but we met up at a new venue in West Lothian called Knightly Gaming. Check it out guys, it's Knight as in K-N-I-G-H-T, Knightly Gaming. They're just getting started as well, but the potential for their building in terms of location and size as a gaming venue is brilliant, so we're hoping it's going to do well. Anyway, we've got two games for you. It's going to be British against German, the same British list against two different German lists, two different players. Now, these are the two games that kind of played to conclusion on the day. I recorded some of the other games and I'll put some clips in for you. But it's not the normal format, shall we say. I'm kind of doing lots of pointing at things. You see my finger pointing at things as I'm trying to direct myself when I'm doing the narration to remember what the hell happened. So hopefully you can still follow it okay and get a feel for the lists, the manoeuvrings, deployments, and for how the games actually came to their conclusions. So, let's make a start. So the first game is going to be Tom against Mark. The mission is Breakthrough. Now, they both chose attack and rolled off, and Mark was the attacker. So let's have a quick look at the mission itself before we go over to the game. So Mark and Tom are playing Breakthrough. You can see the deployment zones there. The defender has to choose diagonally opposite zones to defend from. The attacker chooses one to attack from, and the objectives go in the grey. That's the grey area there. Oh, special rules, folks. So the defence got an ambush in this. They've got immediate reserves and they can come on in either corner of the deployment zone. And victory conditions are fairly standard, except it's turn 6 that the objectives go live. Mark's list has got a tank and a infantry formation. The infantry formation has 2 full platoons, 1 short platoon. The tanks have a company command of 2 Shermans and 3 platoons of 2 Shermans with a Firefly, and they've got a priest battery with a Sherman observer to support all of that. Tom's list, if I can remember exactly right, is SS. He's got company command of 2 Stooks, platoon of 4 Stooks, 4 Panthers, an unarmoured Panzer Grenadier platoon, an armoured reconnaissance Panzer Grenadier type platoon, a couple of anti-aircraft half-tracks, 2 Pumas with a 20mm turret, 4 Stummels, and 3 250 mortar half-tracks. Here's today's table, folks. The British are going to end up playing both games on this. Now Tom is a defender, so he's defending the diagonal deployment zones, the quarters. He's got his main force in here and some more over there, and then Mark is attacking from that far quarter, where the objectives being in this quarter here. Now here you can see Tom's got some Stooks in ambush, platoon of 4 Stooks, and then in reserve he's got his lighter elements, the anti-aircraft and also the Panthers. And then you can see he's got a platoon deployed on the ground, he's got his Stummels, his Stook command and the scout half-tracks on the table along with the mortars. And here is Mark's deployment, everything's on the table. He's got a force ready to head off to that distant corner, and then everyone else pointing towards the objectives. He has got 1 platoon in reserve and everything else there ready to go. Here's Mark's reserves, and it's the smaller of his 3 infantry platoons, or have to come in unsupported. So Mark is on the move with some infantry moving into the little village, some infantry moving into the wood just in front of him. You've also got the Sherman platoons moving up on each of his flanks, so to speak, plus 1 stationary in the middle along with the observer Sherman. In terms of his initial shooting, he fired at the Stoogs that are going to ground. That's an entire template of crops we're seeing. And then he also fired at the Stumels, once again, who are going to ground, so no hits there. The artillery was pre-arranged in there as well, but it didn't get any hits onto the Stumels, so nothing for the first turn. Tom's first turn, he declares his ambush, the Stoogs, as you can see, and he got his reserves on straight away. Bad timing for Mark. And then he's shooting. The Stoogs managed to get 4 hits, and they destroyed 2. So not looking good for them, just a Firefly left. Then over here, the Stumels managed to get 2 bales. But the Stoogs are there to back them up. Or is it the other way around? Because they managed to kill 2 Shermans, leaving 1 baled Firefly. So a bit of a devastating round of shooting from the Germans right away. And in the meantime, his infantry have moved off towards the objective, I should point out. There you go, that's the Shermans biting the dust, unfortunately. Two dead and 1 baled. Even though he's removed that marker, it is 1 baled. And you can see the infantry have moved off there. The mortars are seeking to range in on the village. The Stumels managed to shoot and scoot, but the Stoogs didn't. So Mark has 2 important sets of motivations to do. He's got to try and keep those Fireflies on the table for a bit of retribution, shall we say, but they both fail. And then in shooting he manages to hit lots of the Stoogs. 2 of them failed, but when it came to firepowers, just a 2 up. So he had a real opportunity to even the score there a little. Same against the company command Stoogs with his 6-pounders. 1 of them failed to save again, but once again failed firepower on Mark's part, so the dice are not with him so far. And let's not forget the priests who tried to range in on this big juicy target, all these tanks, but no real effect. Quite hard to kill tanks with artillery, but when you've just got to get something on the table in terms of results, then you've got to give it a go. Tom's second move, everything is on the move, though one of the Stoogs got stuck pointing his backside out of the wood. That's not very good. You can see the Stumels continue to move. The infantry moved up in half tracks into the wood. The infantry that are already on the objective, they have dug in. So he's in a very good position. Then the mortar half tracks are fired into the village. And the Stoogs are fired at the Shermans, but to no effect. There is actually a dead Stumel there. I think it died to the priests in the first round of shooting. But you can see Mark is going to try and keep the pressure on, use his remaining tanks, and then maybe rely on his infantry. And in shooting, well, one of the tanks, I think the Firefly, managed to kill a Stoog, so that's not bad. That's progress. And then the artillery, that ranged in kind of on the half tracks of Stumels and infantry, and managed to kill the second in command and get a pin on the infantry that they're with as well, I think. So maybe the start of some pressure from the Brits. Not much from Tom this turn. There was a smoke barrage across the village to impede visibility for the spotter and the artillery, and that was about it. Everything else was just digging in and staying put. Mark's reserves have arrived. There's not many of them, so they've gone into this field here in the hope of being able to dig in within 8 inches of that objective. The other infantry are moving up to pressurise the other objective. The company command tanks are moving around the back of that wood, try to keep away from the Tigers and the Stoogs, and there's some infantry to support them. And the smoke is still a problem for them to get some fire downrange. Mark has decided it's time to move the priests, get them a bit closer to the fight, and perhaps out of line of sight of the Panthers. And then there's not much shooting because of the smoke. The infantry got a couple of hits on these dug-in guys, but with them being in bulletproof cover, even if they failed to save, there's very little chance of hurting them. The last reserves arrived for Tom, and forgot to mention the Pumas arrived before they're over by the mortar half-tracks to support them. And then the Stummels have moved up to use their machine guns on all those poor infantry. And some cross-checks going on here. It's not always good with Stug try to do a cross-check. The mortars are continuing to bombard the infantry moving out of in and around that village basically. And then lots and lots of machine gun shots on these poor guys here. And it's not going to go well, folks. You can see the amount of saves that Mark's having to make there, and because they just arrived, they're not dug in. So they're just deciding who's a goner here. They've already started to take some casualties. So between the Stummels, the half-tracks over to the left, the infantry over to the left, and infantry in front, there's only going to be a couple of these guys left. And there you go, after the last of the firing, that's it. Now the company command for the Shermans have tried to hit a mortar half-track or two and missed. The artillery is ranging in on the Stummels, the infantry beside them, and the company command is not yet dug in. He's had to move from that previous bombardment, but no luck. They managed to range in okay, but didn't cause any casualties. In Tom's next turn, he finished off those two surviving bases of infantry, and then kept fire down on the other infantry who were moving up, got a couple of bases, tried shooting at the Shermans with his Stoogs, but had no luck there. So Mark thought about getting an assault in here, maybe getting the Pumas driving off the mortar half-tracks, but he thought more wisely. He moved them back. The other infantry came out to get within 8 inches off that other objective, and he just moved up to try and get some fire down range to take away some of the Tom's assets that can shoot back at them. And then, in terms of shooting, a couple of hits on the Stoogs, but no fails. The artillery ranged in successfully onto the Panthers, but once again, no failed saves, no impact, and the 6-pounders also had a go, but didn't cause any damage. So critical turn 6. Tom is just getting all his assets together to machine gun those infantry. They're not dug in, so they're going to be taking a lot of hits, and they're going to have to make a lot of saves, and if you can get rid of them, then it's pretty much game over for the Brits. And as you can see, they're getting whittled down as Tom is firing the units. One left, and a bucket load more dice firing in there. Bucket load of saves on one figure, and that, folks, is that. The second game I recorded was Mark again versus Dave, and the mission is Bridgehead. Now, once again, they rolled off to see who the attacker was, and it was Dave. So this time, Mark's British are going to be defending. Mark and Dave are playing Breakthrough. As you can see, it's quite an unusual mission, this one. It's got this kind of horseshoe-shaped deployment zone for the attacker, very restricted in depth, and a very compact deployment zone for the defender. Now, special rules are there's minefields. First of all, there's an ambush for the defender, and there is delayed and scattered reserves deep scattered reserves for the defender, which means they're not going to start with much tanks on the table, and they can't be sure they're going to arrive where they're needed. Victory conditions are pretty much there from turn 1, so it's quite an interesting mission because of the potential for outflanking. So we'll see how the guys play it. Dave's list is Stug company with Panzer Grenadiers. So the Stugs are company command, and then I think 3 platoons of Stugs, one of which in each platoon is a Stu, 42. Then Panzer Grenadier company command with a platoon of Panzer Grenadiers, a platoon of Panzer Grenadiers and the 250 half-tracks, the recon ones, Amakar platoon, 4 Stummels and 2 mortar half-tracks. Dave is taking advantage of the deployment on this mission to mount what is basically a big flank attack, get around the front of those minefields that you can see there that are in front of Mark's deployment zone. You can see he's got an infantry platoon in the village, in the fields, he's got 6-pounders in ambush, Shermans in the woods, and artillery, the priests sitting behind the woods. And Dave's got some Stummels just in front of that, and over to the right, a little out of shot, his 2 mortar half-tracks. And then he's used the spearhead rule to advance his Amakars and reconnaissance half-tracks further up the flank. For movement, he's doing lots of blitzing to get the Stugs in a position to shoot on the Shermans, and moving up the half-tracks so they can get those infantry close to the objectives. For shooting, well, he's got some direct fire to do, but it's going to be very hard to hit anything because it's all going to ground. He tries some artillery from the mortars on the infantry, but it doesn't have any effect, so nothing really for the first turn. So Mark is seeing all those juicy half-tracks coming up and has decided to pop his 6-pounder ambush. The half-tracks are in cover, that whole area we're counting as cover. But in terms of shooting, once again, his 5-power dice has let him down. He's got quite a few hits, but only ended up with 3 bales and 1 destroyed, so he's not having much luck with the firepower, even in game number 2. Now, his artillery managed to kill one of the armoured cars. It didn't kill anything else, but artillery isn't always going to kill armoured weapons. And one successful shot from the Shermans that killed a Stu. Dave has moved us more half-tracks into range of the anti-tank guns, but otherwise has sat still. He's continued his bombardment, and the Stummels trying to hit that front platoon. The Stugs did well, they managed to kill 2 of the Shermans, just leaving the Firefly. But all those half-tracks shooting at those 3-up, save, careful anti-tank guns didn't have any effect. So Mark has continued to punish those half-tracks. You can see there's some more destroyed, some still bailed out, and then the artillery is coming in and adding to it as well. They actually killed quite a lot of the supporting half-tracks, the Panzer Grenadiers that is on the left there, and killed 3 bases inside the half-tracks. I seem to have managed to miss a turn there, folks, and it's quite an important one. Mark got some reserves on, but with the random reserves it was away in the other corner, so they're having to make their way over. But more significantly, before that, Dave dismounted his infantry, his surviving infantry, the reconnaissance platoon was in better condition than the other one, and then assaulted the anti-tank guns. And that's always a danger if you're going to pop an ambush with your anti-tank guns. If it's not behind a line of supporting infantry or something else that can push back an assault, any infantry that are within that kind of threat range, they're a real threat. And it was in this case. The infantry just went in and smashed the guns to bits. Mark's reserves are starting to arrive in force now, including, remember these are random reserves, including some arriving right behind the Stugs, so that could be really nasty. The artillery has moved to get better line of sight and to get away from the infantry in the wood. Now, you can see there's a bit of a pincer with Shermans to the front and Shermans to the back, but they all missed. Even the ones at the back, they would have been straight to firepower against the weak side and rear armour, all missed. These infantry came in and had a go at the half tracks and where they can against infantry on their right, but once again they didn't have any effect. They wouldn't have had much effect against the half tracks, but they had to come on there because of where they rolled, so they're giving it as good a go as they can. And Mark is just checking to see how far he is actually away from that objective now. Dave is closing in on the objective. He's concentrating a lot of attention on it. He's, for instance, only turned one Stug platoon to face the Shermans to the rear. The rest is concentrating on the front because there is a threat there too. You can see in the wood there, the last Firefly died by the way before. He's got his guys ready to make a move on the objective to the front. For shooting, he managed to kill 2 Shermans and build a Firefly. That's with 3 tanks firing with a full rate of fire. Nothing against the other Shermans. And then the infantry in the field in front of the objective are being hit by artillery, Stummels, other infantry, so they're taking quite a lot of casualties and already getting very worn down. And as you can see, the infantry that came on from reserves are getting smashed to bits. There's just far too many machine guns around them. In Mark's next turn, the Firefly that came in from reserve, the survivor, ran away. Common theme, unfortunately, for him. He's moving infantry over. He's getting more reserves on the wrong side, as you can see. So he's moving infantry over to try and protect that objective. And the few survivors from the platoon that were sitting there already are just hunkering down, waiting to see if they can, with a bit of support, push back any assaults that might come in.
Oh, he must be towards it.
He's just out of command.
Yeah.
He's out. In Dave's next turn, a bit of shooting in which he managed to kill a Sherman, and the most important thing here was the assault on the infantry. Dave is consolidating there just now. There was lots of shots went in to begin with, left just a couple of guys. Dave got his assault in okay and managed to destroy them. And you can see the infantry at the back there, they're pretty much broken as well. So Max once again had his infantry caught in the open and taking casualties. So in his next turn, he's moved his surviving infantry up, ready to do an assault to see if he can push back those German infantry that are beside the objective in the field, and just trying to hang on basically. But it doesn't go well. As you can see, by Dave's next turn there's a swarm of Stugs all around there, so those infantry that kind of bounced off in the assault that they attempted were in the open, got machine gunned, which left nobody within 8 inches of the objective. So that would be a win for Dave as he started his turn within 4 inches and ended it with no defending teams within 4 inches. So another win for the Germans and another defeat for the British. But let's do a bit of a recap, see what the players thought about the games and what my own thoughts were as well. that's the two main games for the report, but there were another couple of games played by the guys, and I'm going to show you a quick overview of these games. It's not going to be a detailed overview. Both of them timed out. There was no conclusion. That was largely down to the guys not having played for so long, I think. You know, that was a major factor, as well as Bill, who takes forever to do anything. He nearly got a nosebleed in the second game when he got past turn 3. Now, there is a few blurry scenes in this. My video editing software, it's gone a bit weird. Whenever there's whenever there's a green background, and there's quite a lot of green backgrounds in Wargaming, it just seems to blur. So I think I'm needing a new video editing software, and I'm already looking at that just now. But here's a quick look at how those games went. Dave was the attacker in this game, also in Breakthrough, and he put his Stooks all on the table at the start, kept his Panzer Grenadiers in reserve. So he had Stooks and Stummels on the table, and he basically built a wall of Stooks for the Bill's Sherman company to get through. Now you can see there, Dave's put that wall down, he's popped an ambush, he's got on reserves on, and those are Panzer Grenadiers heading towards the objective, and then it was just a big long Mexican standoff. Those Stummels did a bit of damage, stuck around, got backed up later on by some armoured cars, and then with the Stooks firing at long distance, basically pinned down the Shermans whilst the reserves moved off towards the objective. Risky, because, you know, if those reserves had arrived late and Bill's reserves had arrived early, it could have gone the other way. But Bill's tied up in the town, some long range shooting. Both of them are having problems hitting each other because they're both careful, and those light elements just can't kill each other. They're just sitting, shooting away, missing or failing firepowers. You can see like there's a couple of Stuarts that have been bailed out most of the game. Some Shermans are starting to get killed by the Stooks, but that's just come down to the dice. Here you can see reserves have arrived, got a commando platoon and some Crusader anti-aircraft, but they've got a fully in position Panzer Grenadier platoon to deal with. But if a smoke barrage there to try and stop the Stooks firing in, one and only one half-track bailed out by the anti-aircraft. A Stook get killed though, one bailed, so some progress again on the shooting front. And any second now, up there we go, Stummels bailed again. That's with the intact Stuarts helping out too. And then the game kind of timed out with a massive assault by the commandos that was never going to get in, to be honest. There was so much counterfire coming in there, but in the end they all took at least one hit every stand, but only 2 bases died, but that was that. Bill and Tom's second game was Encounter, so that's where they're both squaring off on the length of the table with scattered and delayed reserves. Now you can see that railway track going right down the middle. That becomes a quite significant feature in this game. So they're just finishing off their deployment here, taking some initial moves. Lots of stuff is hiding in woods just now. Hiding seems to be the main theme for the start of the game. So you can see some Shermans very close by to some Stooks with Panzer Grenadier support. And then lots of half-tracks moving up into the tree line to have a go at the church, which is full of British infantry. Commandos, I believe. But everything stopped on the railway line. Now, this is a game that might not have a lot happening until reserves start to arrive. You can see some of the reconnaissance infantry moving up into the train station there. But nothing too much happening as both sides are building up the strength. some casualties to the commandos from all those half-tracks. I mean, there's Stummels as well as other kind of half-tracks here, so there's a couple of Stugs, so they are going to start causing a few casualties. Some reserves arrived. It's Stuarts, they came in that corner, but they're keeping their nose behind that building because there's some big bad Stugs and Stummels with anti-tank 9. And here come the Panthers from reserve, so they've immediately gone and hidden behind a hill. There's a lot of hiding in this game, folks, so I'm not going to promise you a hell of a lot of action. Some more reserves, that's the company command, and they're getting in a position to have a go at some half-tracks, and you can see they managed to get a couple of bales on some Stummels. Otherwise the Shermans are kind of edging up a wee bit towards the centre, but not much. So it's a bit of a Mexican standoff just now. As you can see now, there's actually a couple of Stummels kaput, and the I think it may have been the company command also took a hit for the Shermans there, and a little bit of a shoot and scoot from the Stummels. So the Panthers are moving up, Stugs are moving into the tree line with some infantry support, and Panthers, for sticking the nose out, one of them gets killed and a Stug gets killed, and that's your concern in this game, making the first move. So the half-tracks are pushing forward, but there's still plenty of commandos in those buildings. They're going to be hard to shoot out because they're careful, got a 3-up save, so they're not going to be getting killed anytime soon. Panthers are trying a wee bit of a different approach. See if they can get some retribution on the Shermans, but it's still very cagey, folks. So the Shermans have taken a few casualties back, but they're reinforcing themselves, sending commandos off against the Panthers, and looked like it was possibly Stuarts who got killed there, folks, not company command. But there's a wee bit of movement, but still not much happening there, folks. Not much happening at all. Commandos are still in there in sufficient numbers. And the Shermans are, and this is where the game timed out. There was a bit of movement, started a bit of pressure, but it basically started along the railway line and finished along the railway line. So I'll recap, guys, mainly focusing on the two featured games. Well, first of all, I have to say Mark's luck sucked terribly. In that first game it was over by the end of turn 2 because he'd taken a lot of casualties. He'd very successfully hit back but failed all his firepowers, so he never really stood much of a chance after that. It was just, could he hold on for a draw, and his infantry never got a chance to dig in. Tom's list did very well. I think he was quite happy with it. He's been messing about with SS Panther lists for a while, and I have to say I do like the current configuration that he used. I think it's better than what I've seen him try to use in the distance games we've played. And also in that game, Tom got his lucky break at the start, reserves on straight away, clobbered the enemy, got nothing back, and then he just very carefully concentrated on Mark's infantry whilst keeping his tanks out of trouble and committing the half-tracks to take on the infantry, but also trying to keep them safe. So it was a good win for Tom. Now, the second game I think was another tough one for Mark. Delayed scattered reserves, they can come on where you want or where you don't want, and he had a bit of both. Where they came on where he did want, luck again, shooting into the back of those Stugs, straight to firepower. If he got any hits, 3 misses. And then when he was shooting those half-tracks to bits, with the opportunity of obviously killing the infantry inside them, lots of bales, so he didn't have much luck in that game either. Dave did the right thing in that game. He kept everything together, and he did his wall of Stug thing again, and that was very hard for Mark to stand up against. And also watch out as well, guys, in your own games, if you're going to pop an anti-tank gun ambush, don't put it within assault range of infantry, or they're probably going to get it if they have not got lots of support themselves. In terms of the lists, I think they were all quite good. Mark, though, his first game in a year and a half, he knows, and he said himself that he needs to look at that British list. He kind of just flung two simple formations together, and he needs to get some better balance in there. So there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. We're going to see when our next meetup can be. September's looking pretty tricky for us, unfortunately. In the meantime, though, we'll keep these battle reports coming, and hopefully in October get another set of reports from one of our meetups. So thanks, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And if you've not done so already, please subscribe so I can keep building the channel and bring in more Flames of War content to all the people who enjoy this game.